Is this working now? Yes, it is working now. There we go. All right. Am I a bit loud? Maybe. Let's go here. How's this sounding? Now, unfortunately, you're about a minute behind me because unfortunately, YouTube streams. It has a little bit of a lag. So I'll find out in a minute if everything is okay. So I can now see it says can't hear you, Chibs. But that was a minute ago. So we were in the past then. And I believe I've now fixed it. So, yeah, welcome to today's session. Am I loud enough? Too loud? This is probably about how I'm going to speak. Let me know if everything is good in the chat. All right, let me have a little sip. All right, shall we get straight into it? Well, let's just see who's on at the moment. Kate's on. Hello, Kate. Hello, Izzy. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, D. Willis, whoever that is. And hey, Melanie, thanks for letting me know that everything is working now. So, yeah, welcome to another Monday morning for some and Sunday afternoon / evening for others. So, yeah, I'm here. Z's in her little cage today. We'll see if she behaves. Olive's over there behaving well as per usual. All right, so let's start as always with a couple of questions. Have you ever walked into a room full of smart, very successful people and thought any minute now they're going to realize that I've got absolutely no idea what I'm doing? Or have you finished a big project, got a round of applause, lots of accolades, and instead of celebrating, your brain whispers to you, well, you got away with that one. Next time, everyone's going to find out what you're really like. Or someone's given you a compliment and you instantly brush it off, thinking if they really knew me, they wouldn't be impressed at all. So that, my friends, is imposter syndrome. And I still haven't sorted out my cough, but we will see what happens. Having a little bit of a detox at the moment, so I'm seeing if that works for me. But anyway, enough about me. In today's session, we're going to break this topic down. Okay, so where does imposter syndrome come from? Why it sticks around even after we've succeeded, and most importantly, how to stop letting your imposter syndrome run the show. So I'm going to share practical, science-backed tools that I use every day with my clients, real strategies to interrupt that noise in your head, and finally get some mental peace. And I'm not just going to give you theories, I'm going to give you tools that you can start using immediately. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Chibs Okereke. I'm a stress and burnout coach. I'm a mindfulness facilitator, and I'm one of the meditation instructors and narrators on the Calm app. So if you're new here, welcome back. If you've, if you're new here, welcome for the first time. If you've been with me for a while, welcome back. Today we're going to be diving into this topic that affects so many of us, and I think you'll be surprised how many people get affected by imposter syndrome. We tend to think it's just us, but it especially affects those of us who are always pushing themselves, always striving to do things well, always raising the bar and never quite feeling like they've reached it. Now, imposter syndrome isn't just a little bit of self-doubt or humility. It's that constant low-key fear that you're one misstep, one tough question, one bad day away from being found out. Now, maybe everyone else around you thinks that you've got it together, but deep down, you feel like you're just winging it. And even when you do succeed, it still doesn't calm the voice in your head. It just raises the stakes. Now, if you suffer from imposter syndrome, before you start getting too depressed, here's the hopeful news. Imposter syndrome usually doesn't affect people who are genuinely unqualified. It usually hits the ones who are competent, hardworking, and constantly trying to grow. So if you feel like a fraud, if then it probably means that you care a lot. And that also means that you're likely not a fraud. Does that make sense? So today we're not here to cure imposter syndrome or pretend that it magically disappears. We're here to understand it, to loosen its grip, and to stop letting it dictate how we show up in our lives. And as always, I'm going to walk you through my 5-step framework. So it's learn it, catch it, sit with it, respond, reflect. And by the end of this session, you'll have a clearer picture of where your imposter syndrome really comes from. You'll have a way to catch it in real time without letting it hijack your moments. You'll have tools to sit with the fear and the discomfort instead of pushing it away. You'll have a bunch of practical responses from quick resets to long-term mindset shifts. And then finally, a way to reflect so you can build your confidence over time. All right, let's dive in with step 1, and that's learn it. Excuse me. I need to work out how to mute this mic so you don't have to hear all of my horrible noises. Anyway, let's start with this. Not all imposter syndrome is the same. So for some people, it's just a bit of regular old insecurity. All right. So for some of you, you might have grown up in a very safe, very supportive environment. Your parents might have believed in you, but somewhere along the way, maybe through school, through comparison, through social media, the pressure of a new job, you might have developed some self-doubt. So for those of you, this type of imposter syndrome is more situational rather than deep down in your bones. But for some of us, imposter syndrome runs much deeper. It's not about a single moment of doubt. It's a story we've been telling ourselves for years. It's about how we were raised. It's the environment that we grew up in. So maybe you grew up in a high performance household where mistakes weren't tolerated. Maybe you had an environment where love was conditional. Maybe you were only seen when you were achieving or performing or keeping the peace. Maybe you were the responsible one or the quiet one or the one who never needed anything. And so perhaps you learned at a very early age that if I want to be accepted, I need to be impressive. I need to stay perfect, stay useful, and never be a burden. Now, my favorite, Tim Fletcher, he says that many kids who grow up in emotionally unsafe environments learn to play certain roles. He calls it putting on masks as a way to survive. And then over time, those masks become their identity. So over time, you stop believing that you are enough and you start believing that the only acceptable version of you is the one who's performing, the one who's wearing that mask. And that's where imposter syndrome really takes hold of us. Because even when we're doing well, even when people are applauding, even when people are writing the most beautiful comments about how your videos and meditations have been helping them, you can sometimes feel disconnected, like you're not being seen. Or worse, you might think if people really saw me, they'd walk away. So imposter syndrome, in this case, isn't so much about being or feeling insecure, it's about feeling unseen. Now, if you haven't worked it out yet, you're starting to realize that I'm basically working on myself in public. So you're all part of my public therapy sessions. So thank you very much for being there and thank you for listening. But over the years, I've worked on my imposter syndrome. So it doesn't get to me much anymore these days, but it still comes up every now and again. So let me give you an example. If you're on my LinkedIn, you've probably heard this example, or maybe on my Instagram, I might have said it as well. So a year or two ago, I was invited to run a stress and burnout workshop at Stanford University for a group of postdocs. So I didn't know what postdocs were. I assumed it was like a fancy name for a Stanford name for post grads. But anyway, I show up, and the building that I get taken to is the School of Medicine, which had me kind of stressing out a little bit anyway. Not ideal to be talking about the nervous system and stressing the nervous system to a bunch of super smart kids. But anyway, it's okay. So I'm meeting the organizers for lunch before the session, and I casually ask, so what's the background of the group? What age are they? And yeah, by the way, what's a postdoc? And then she goes to me, oh, they're probably in their 30s and 40s, and postdocs are doctors that have come back to Stanford to do advanced research. So in my head, I'm like, far out. Well, I've said some other words, but yeah, but basically, what are you doing here? You're about to teach the nervous system to doctors in the School of Medicine, and doctors at the top of their game as well. So basically, nervous system experts. So I'm thinking, no way am I going to even go there talking about the nervous system. I'm just going to work around it, focus on my mindfulness framework. I'm definitely know more about mindfulness than them. So then I got to a point in the presentation where I really needed to talk about the nervous system to get my point across. So I made a joke. I told them to just smile and nod if I got anything wrong. And then I leaned into what I normally talk about. And ironically, it was during that section of the workshop that I found them to be the most engaged, because while they knew the science, they hadn't thought about stress like I had. They hadn't made the connections that I've made. So I taught them something and hopefully added something or added some value to their lives. And so what was meant to be a 90-minute session turned into a 2-hour session because they all stayed behind to ask me questions. So I walked away with this reminder, right? Imposter syndrome doesn't show up because you're unqualified. It usually shows up when you're doing something important. It usually shows up when you're doing something brave, right? That's my little story about my imposter syndrome that comes out every now and again. And yeah, so Melanie, I'll hopefully we'll have some of those questions answered by the end of this session. And thank you, Windy Lee, for the wishes to my speedy recovery. It's been a very long recovery, but it's okay. What else have I got to do apart from write scripts and talk to you all? All right. So we've talked about where imposter syndrome comes from and how it can show up. Let's talk about how to catch it in the act, because the way it actually shows up in real life is pretty sneaky. Sometimes it's really obvious, maybe you get a compliment and you instantly dismiss it. Or you nail a presentation and instead of feeling proud, you tell yourself, that was a fluke, next time I'm going to mess it up. But a lot of the time, it's more subtle. So you might procrastinate, not because you're lazy, but because the voices in your head are telling you you're not capable of doing it well. Or on the other extreme, you over prepare for everything because you think if you're not 110% ready, people will finally realize you don't know what you're doing. Other ways it might show up could be staying quiet in meetings. So let's say you know the answer to something, but just in case you're wrong, you don't want to say anything because everyone will find out that you're a fraud. Or maybe you're always comparing yourself to friends, to colleagues, to strangers online, and it always feels like you come up short. So how do you catch those whispers? Well, it starts with getting to know the voices in your head, right? And I've got a lot of voices in my head, I realize now that I've started paying attention over these last years. So it's recognizing the mental patterns that show up when your imposter syndrome is creeping in. So one simple cue is this, right? So pay attention when your reaction doesn't match the moment. So let me see if I can explain what that means. So let's say you get a win, but instead of joy, you feel anxiety, or you get praise and immediately downplay it, or you keep tweaking that email and slide deck even though it's perfectly fine, or you get that promotion that you've been working towards, and instead of celebrating, you panic. Right. And, honestly, I noticed this the other day with my daughter Ziggy. So she's gone to a new school. She wanted to join the debate team. Okay. And so she's in year 10, she's in year 9. And I think she's in year 9. I never know what year she's in. Terrible parent, sorry. She's in year 9. Let's go with that. And she couldn't get into the year 9 debate team. It was full up, and she was just lost her mind for several hours. She was really upset because she really wanted to join the team. Then she gets a summons from the year 10, the year above, saying, can you join our debate team? Now she's in an absolute panic, and she was just stressed out, and there was no consoling her, right? So it's really interesting. Like, it's something we want. Maybe it's that promotion, maybe it's getting onto that debate team, and then we get what we want. Maybe we get even more, but that joy very quickly turns into anxiety. All right, so these mismatches are clues. They tell you that something deeper is driving the show. Catching it doesn't mean fixing it, not yet. It just means noticing. Oh, there's that voice again. There's that feeling that doesn't match this moment. All right. So now that you've learned what imposter syndrome is, you've started to notice how imposter syndrome shows up. Before we jump into fixing things, we're going to sit with things. And I acknowledge, if you're impatient like me, your instinct is probably to skip this bit. But if we want to make quicker improvements over time, this part really matters. Because imposter syndrome isn't just a thought problem, it's a nervous system response. That feeling in your body when you think, I don't belong here, or I'm going to be found out, that's not just a mindset issue. That's your survival system lighting up. So instead of immediately challenging the thought or giving yourself a pep talk, just try this. Step 1, pause. Take a breath. Notice what's happening in your body. Is there tension in your chest? Is there fluttering in your stomach? Tightness in your throat? Maybe tension in the neck? Like, what's going on? Step 2, label it. This is shame. This is fear of not being enough. This is the old belief showing up again. Get to step 3 in a second. Step 3, ground yourself. Okay, so use a simple technique like placing your feet flat on the floor and feeling the ground beneath you, or taking 3 slow, deep, deliberate breaths, or even saying out loud, I'm safe. This is just an old pattern. I'm okay. And this step isn't about getting rid of the feeling. It's about building tolerance to this discomfort inside us. Because when you can sit with the discomfort without spiraling or without trying to fix it, you're starting to rewire your brain. You're proving to yourself over time that you can feel these feelings and still show up. So the more you practice sitting with that discomfort, the less the discomfort will be over time. All right, so we have caught our imposter syndrome. We've sat with it for a bit, if we're not super impatient. Now, what we're probably all here for, let's talk about how to respond to imposter syndrome in the moment. So first of all, I'm going to give you a couple of, maybe a few quick fixes, and then we'll move into the longer term strategies. Now, these quick fixes aren't trying to fix the whole pattern here. We're just using them to interrupt your imposter syndrome in the moment so that it doesn't hijack your behavior. So the first technique is to use the third person. All right. So use the third person. This one's simple but powerful. So when that inner voice says, I'm such a fraud, try going LeBron James and switching to the third person, right? So instead of I don't belong here, you say Chibs is feeling that he doesn't belong right now. Or you can step into the role of the parent you never had. So you can be extra. So instead of LeBron, you can be a kind parent. So you can be extra sweet and kind to yourself. And you can say something like, of course, Chibs is feeling this way. He's doing something big. He's doing something brave. And it makes sense that fear would show up here. Now, that might sound a little weird at first to some of you, but speaking to yourself in that way, either LeBron or like a parent, that creates a shift. Right? It creates a little distance between you and the thought. And that distance is often enough to stop the spiral. Okay, so speaking to yourself in the third person, that activates your cortex, your thinking brain, instead of letting your limbic brain, the emotional brain, run the show. Okay, so the limbic brain is all about me, I. And the cortex brain is the logical, rational, slow thinking brain that can get a bit of clarity and get a bit of distance. All right, so using the third person gives you that distance. Next tool, another simple one, say it out loud. All right, so name what's happening. I'm feeling like an imposter right now. You can say it to yourself or you can say it to someone that you trust. Saying it out loud helps to remove the shame. And more often than not, if you say it out loud to someone else, you'll often find that the other person goes, oh my God, same, me too. And then suddenly you're not alone. You're just human. Another simple, quick tool, anchor your thoughts in evidence. So this is all about facts over feelings, logical cortex over limbic brain. So when your mind says, I'm not good enough, pull out those receipts. So literally keep a list of your wins. So testimonials, emails, kind messages, kind comments, things that you've done that have made a difference. So you're not doing this to boost your ego, but for some of us, that might be a nice little side effect. We're doing it to counterbalance the story that our brain is telling us. Imposter syndrome thrives on amnesia. So when you pull out the evidence, this is how we remember who we are. And our final quick tool is choose presence over perfection. So ask yourself, this is a big one for me, but ask yourself, what matters more right now, being perfect or being present? Now, 9 times out of 10, I think you'll find that the answer is presence, right? Your friends, your team, your clients, your audience, they don't want perfect. They want real. So show up as a human and not as a highlight reel. The reason I'm laughing a lot during this one is because I just think, yeah, this is me, and this is something that I've definitely incorporated into my life. And I think if you've been watching me for a while, I think you actually prefer to see me screw up or show up late to sessions because I've fiddled with the wrong settings, or tell you when I've delivered a live stream to no one because I was on the wrong link. So I screw up constantly, and now I own it, right? I choose to be present, and I choose to let go of that desire for perfection, right? It's a much more relaxing way to be for a start. And honestly, it's relatable and people seem to appreciate it. You know, when they see me being human, I think then that gives you all permission not to judge yourselves so harshly either, right? So it's a win for everyone. And if we can be, yeah, if we can be more authentic, we can be more present, it really is a win-win for everyone. All right. Yeah, imagine trying to be perfect with this cough going every 4 minutes. I'd be a mess in the corner of the room somewhere. All right. So quick fixes, they're great for getting through the moment, right? But if we really want to loosen the grip of imposter syndrome over the long term and do some proper healing, we've got to go a little bit deeper. This work is a little slower, but it's longer lasting. Now, I'm going to give you a few strategies that will help rewire the beliefs beneath your imposter syndrome, especially if yours comes from deep, early patterns of maybe needing to earn love through performance or perfection or from keeping the peace. Now, this first tool is foundational, and that's to reparent your younger self. Again, my good friend Tim Fletcher, he talks about how many of us carry wounds from childhood, from times where we didn't feel safe, seen, or loved just as we were. So, what that means is, as adults, every time we're not achieving or impressing people, it can trigger old pain. So, reparenting means showing up for that younger version of you, offering the words, the safety, and the care that your younger you didn't get as a child. So, this could be things like speaking to yourself gently when you make a mistake. It could be imagining what your younger self needed to hear and saying it to yourself now. And it could be holding space for your fear without shaming it, right? That can be a bit of a one for me. If I get something in, my inner voice wants to get kind of aggressive with it, right? And shame it, like, oh, shut up, get away, you know? So I've got that kind of, that instant reflex in my mind. But if we can hold space for our fear without shaming it, it just gives it that space. Now, it might sound a little soft, but it's neuroscience, right? You're literally updating your nervous system to feel safe without these masks that we've got so used to wearing, or these roles that we've got so used to playing. Now, this is slow, quiet work, but it's the kind of work that creates lasting change, because when your inner child feels safe, your adult self doesn't have to keep proving itself. That makes sense? All right. The next strategy is to get curious about the role you're playing. So, to get curious about that mask that you're wearing. Because when imposter syndrome kicks in, it's easy to go straight into fix it mode. But instead of trying to get rid of it or fighting it, try getting curious about your imposter syndrome. Ask yourself, what's the role this part of me is playing? What's it trying to protect me from? When did I first learn that I needed to be this high achieving or impressive version of myself to feel safe or accepted? Now, this part of you, this mask, isn't bad, it's protective, right? And when you get curious instead of judgmental, you can create space for change. So when you explore the role with compassion, you realize it's not there to sabotage you, it's there to shield you. But what kept you safe as a child might now be holding you back as an adult. And that's where the healing begins. All right, so my final long-term healing strategy is my favorite that usually manages to work its way into my strategies each week, and that's a self-compassion practice. And again, for those of you that haven't heard me before, self-compassion isn't just being nice to yourself. It's about acknowledging your pain without minimizing it or inflating it. Now, Dr. Kristen Neff, she breaks self-compassion into three parts. All right. So we've got mindfulness. So we notice the suffering. our common humanity. So we realize and we acknowledge that we're not alone. And then there's kindness. So we respond with care, not criticism, right? So we notice the suffering, we realize that we're not alone, and we respond with care and kindness, not criticism. So try this the next time your imposter syndrome shows up. Pause and say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering, or this is a moment of stress. I know it's not just me. A lot of people feel this way. And may I be kind to myself right now? So it might sound a little awkward at first, or it might feel a little awkward at first, but over time, it softens the edges of that inner critic, right? So you can remember those steps. This is a moment of suffering. Everybody feels this way. May I be kind to myself? But I've also got a meditation that you can use called the 3-step self-compassion break. And that was designed by Dr. Kristen Neff. And you can find her version on YouTube, or I've made a version that you can search for too if you want to listen to me taking you through. It's about a 10-minute guided meditation that takes you slowly through those steps. Actually, I've got one final tool for you, and I haven't actually used this one yet myself, but it's come on very good authority that it works really well. So Izzy, if you're still watching, this is a shout out to you. And that's to keep a photo of yourself as a child, right? So stick a photo of your kid self somewhere visible, or do what Izzy does and have it as her screensaver on her phone. Now, when the imposter voice is screaming at you, or actually whenever you're not being the kindest to yourself, look at that photo and ask, would I talk to little Chibs the way I'm talking to myself right now? What you'll no doubt find is that you instantly soften. You know, of course you wouldn't talk to little Chibs that way, right? So it reconnects you with your worth outside of your performance. All right, so we've learned about where imposter syndrome comes from. We've caught it in the moment. We've sat with it instead of running from it. And we've responded with both quick tools and hopefully some deeper healing as well. Now comes the final step in the framework, reflect. And this part is where the shift really starts to settle in. Because trying a new response once won't magically rewrite the stories in our heads. What rewires our brain, what rewires our nervous system, what truly changes the pattern is looking back with curiosity and asking, how did that new strategy land? What tool helped? What tool didn't work so well? So after you've caught your imposter voice, you've sat with the discomfort and you've responded with one of the tools or techniques, I want you to pause and ask yourself, did I feel more grounded or more anxious after using that response or tool? Did I notice a part of me that still didn't believe the compliment or the success or the positive feedback? What would I do differently next time to feel more authentic, more calm, or more confident? And if you had a win, even a small one, celebrate it. And if the tool you tried didn't work well or didn't go according to plan, that's okay too. That's not failure, it's feedback. So maybe you tried to use logic when reassurance would have felt better. Or maybe you challenged the thought, but you didn't pause to validate the fear beneath it. So that's all valuable insight. But the point of this step is to refine your approach so that over time, your response feels even more aligned and even more effective. And remember, reflection loops you straight back to learn it. So every time you pause and you look back, you're getting better at spotting the pattern. You're getting better at choosing the right tools, and you're getting better at showing up for yourself in a way that feels true and authentic. So this is how we go from feeling like a fraud to feeling quietly confident in who we are. Not overnight, but one small shift and one honest reflection at a time. All right, let's wrap this up. So let's recap what we just walked through. So we started with learn it, understanding the roots of imposter syndrome, and that for many of us, it's something that started in childhood. Perhaps we felt unseen or only valued for our performance. Then we moved to catch it. We learned how to spot the signs in real time. maybe we're brushing off praise or over preparing or staying silent in meetings. So we're noticing these patterns and thoughts. Then we sit with it. We don't rush to fix it. We pause. We notice the nervous system response inside us. We bring awareness and we ground ourselves without spiraling, without self-blame. And then we look at how to respond. So we went through practical, in the moment tools, and then we looked at the deeper healing work, reparenting ourselves, getting curious about the masks we're wearing, and self-compassion. And finally, we wrapped it up with reflect, because every time we look back with curiosity, we strengthen the habit of showing up for ourselves with self-awareness instead of self-criticism. So that's how change sticks, right? That's how healing becomes real. So remember, imposter syndrome isn't a sign that we're broken. It's a sign that we're growing, that we're doing something meaningful, that we've got skin in the game. So honestly, for me, the goal isn't to never feel like an imposter again, right? If my imposter syndrome shows up, I take it as a sign that I'm on the right track and I'm doing something special, something important. I swear, for the last 5 years or so, I have about 2 or 3 serious imposter syndrome moments each year. And each time it comes along, each time it shows up, each time I get through it, I level up, right? And so the goal for me is to recognize it when it shows up, but not to let it run the show. Okay? So imposter syndrome, I think we're feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome. It's not a bad thing. Debilitating imposter syndrome, not good. So here's your action for today. I suggest to you, invite you to pick one of the responses that we covered today. Doesn't matter if it's a quick fix or a deeper one. Just pick one, and then the next time that imposter voice shows up, try it. Then at the end of the day, reflect. Did it shift something? Did it help? What might you tweak next time? All right. So if you found today's session helpful, I've got something exciting coming up. I told you all about this last week, but for those of you who didn't join me last week, soon I'll be launching a brand new 12-week stress and burnout course. And it's all about tackling the traits that make us more prone to burning out. So we're talking overthinking, perfectionism, overworking, imposter syndrome, and all the stuff in between. So there'll be 2 ways to take part. The first way is going to be the self-paced version. You'll get pre-recorded videos, reflection prompts, downloadable PDFs with all the tools and the techniques and the questions. You can do that at your own pace, in your own time, by yourself. And then the second way is the small group coaching version. Same content, but we go deeper together. You'll watch the videos before each of our sessions, and then we'll meet once a week live. There'll be group discussions, there'll be reflections, there'll be breakout rooms, so you can get into smaller groups and share amongst yourselves. And of course, plenty of time for Q&A with me directly. And both versions come with access to a private community. And I am testing my community app at the moment. So let me know if you're interested in joining that community and helping me test it for a couple of weeks before I make it live. So yeah, let me know. So whether you're going solo or you're joining the group course, you'll have a space to connect, to ask questions, and to share wins with others on the same journey. So yeah, so if you're interested in the group course, make sure you either shoot me an email at hello@chibs.co or click on the link that I will put on the description once I've done everything and once I've wrapped up here. And then you'll be at the top of the list when enrollment opens. If you just want to do the self-paced version, of course, there's no limit or urgency there. You can sign up at any time, no rush. And if you want more like this, guided meditations, regular Zoom chats, or just want to support my channel, you can become a premium subscriber at chibsmeditations.com. That was a lot, wasn't it? Thanks for being here today. I appreciate everyone. Let me just have a look at the comments quickly before we wrap up. So Kerry definitely relates to the procrastination aspect. Yeah, it's a real thing. You know, I find when I'm procrastinating, it means I'm usually procrastinating on the most important task. So what I do, I make sure, because we've all got to-do lists, right? So this is a bonus tip for you all. We've all got to-do lists, and what we find is that the most important thing on our to-do list rarely gets done. And when I say most important one, I'm talking about the most anxiety-provoking one, okay? So the most anxiety-provoking thing, which is usually the most important task for you to do, that gets left to the end of the day, okay? So when I feel better, I'll tackle that. But let me just clear my inbox first. Let me just do all these little minor tasks first. And then what we do, we get to the end of the day and maybe, actually, I'm going to push it off until tomorrow, right? I think maybe I should do a whole thing on procrastination because it's such an important topic. So I will. Maybe I'll do that next week. But just in case I don't, I'll keep going with this. So yeah, so what we can do, and then we can go, all right, I'm going to start it tomorrow. And then what happens is all those anxious feelings that we've got in our body, they relieve because we're like, oh, I'm definitely going to do that task tomorrow. So now we feel better about ourselves. Now the anxiety's gone. What the brain is learning is that if I put it off until tomorrow, then I'm minimizing the anxiety. So we put it off until tomorrow. Of course, what happens is we get to tomorrow, and then not only are we just as anxious, we're a little bit more anxious because one, we're getting closer to the deadline, and two, we've let ourselves down because we promised ourselves to do that thing yesterday and we didn't. So now we've got more anxiety. Now what's the brain doing? The brain's saying, oh, okay, well, yesterday I put it off and everything felt better. So let me do that again today. So we put it off until tomorrow. And so the cycle continues. And then it's only when the anxiety is so high that the penalty for not doing the project or doing the task outweighs the anxiety of us doing it because it's like, this is so urgent now, the project. That's when we do it. Okay, so that's why many of us will leave it till the last minute and then we're not at our best doing it and we do a rush job and maybe we do an okay job. Okay, and that's okay, but we've caused ourselves all this stress, all this anxiety throughout the previous weeks, right? So my suggestion is, that was a very long bonus tip, isn't it? Put the most important task at the top of your list each day and tackle that first. You don't need to finish it. It's not about completing that task. It's about starting that task. So maybe it's just, I'm going to write an outline of a presentation. Okay, that's low stakes. Okay, but you're starting it. And then what you find is once you've started writing that outline, oh, I feel a little bit better. Why don't I carry on? Okay, but that's not necessarily the goal. The goal is just to get started. So don't think Nike, it's not just do it. It's just get started. Okay, that was a long bonus tip. All right, there we go. Anyway, maybe I'll leave it there. But yeah, so Kate said to pause and reflect was a great idea, and the little me screensaver. So yeah, you can thank Isabel McDowell for that one. She's on the chat. So yeah, there we go. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I'm Chibzo Kerike, and I will see you all next week. Have a wonderful week.